Oh, okay. So your family, we have I believe, a recent interview here. It was in Spanish, and this is the English version. This is on Intervista, I believe that's how it's pronounced. Anyways, interview with Tomek Bagiński, 2023. This is from what I went through a kind of a lengthy interview. So forgive me, this might take a little while. JBox, how did you get involved with this movie? Have you heard of this Saint Seiya project before? It's actually quite a long story, I know. The title, I've seen some episodes. It was very popular in Europe, as you know, and it was also popular in Eastern Europe. For those who don't know, Tamika's from Poland. It was not as big as, let's say, Italy or some countries south of us, south of Poland, but it was still popular. And I've seen some episodes. So it's not completely unknown, but also I wasn't like very deeply involved in this world. I actually worked on a different project with Toy before, and the work was going well. The work was going so well that at some point they asked exactly the same question. What do you know about Saint Seiya? And I was like, yeah, I know some things. Like about the Greek mythology, I know how the armors are important, who are the main characters and things like that. And they said, take a look. Maybe you can help us work on the story. Maybe you can help us work on the script. It was, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. So it was a while ago. So I took the script, gave them my notes, and at this stage, I was just, kind of friendly thing, and they liked it, and they started working on this together. And many years later, many drafts later, because the world is so big and complex, there are so many characters and so many stories to tell. Many years later, we had our first day on set, finally shot it, and now we have the movie, which is super exciting. So now I know a lot more. Now I am very deeply involved in this world, but we still have people who are like involved deep in this world. They know very everything about this. If I have any deep lore question, I always ask somebody from Toy, and I can always ask people who created it. Also, we had some feedback through the production through drafts from the original author of the manga, Mazuma Kurumada, and he was like cheering us on a lot and giving us some really important feedback about what is important in the story, what is important about Saint Seiya. You've been working on this for 6 years? Yes, but it was on and off. Film development sometimes takes a long time. It's time when it's very small group of working mostly on the script and mostly on like further decisions like where to produce it, how to approach it. A lot of things are involved at this stage because you have to think about the budget, you have to think about the elements, you have to think about how to make the story accessible to the audience who maybe don't know Saint Seiya, and this was probably our biggest challenge because the world of Saint Seiya is so big, with dozens of characters, a lot of backstories, a lot of traditional, like stories within stories. There are a lot of seasons to watch, and they're a really complex big world. And when you create a first big movie, is this world you also have to make accessible to people who've never heard of it. Whew, okay, all right, step ways go. All right, with dozens of characters. Wait, I read that. No, that's actually right. He's just repeating himself. But dozens of characters, a lot of backstories to the story. Like okay. So on one level, it has to work for fans, and we have to be very careful to keep the elements, which are important to fans, elements fans love, but at the same time, we don't have to explain to the fans what is Cosmos. We don't have to explain the fans who the characters are. You you should always do that for a movie, actually. Unless it's like Spider-Man, Superman. Anyways, so we had to first of all make sure it will work for the fans, but at the same time, we have to explain a lot of things how this world works, who Seiya has to be protecting, who is Seiya, what is Cosmos, all this stuff. For the fans, like yeah, obviously, like easy, but we what we found is that we have to explain every single element for people who don't know the story, and that's some pretty hard to do with Saint Seiya. It's very hard. It was a lot for the stories which are so connected for a certain lore. When you have lore like previous story, a previous world, then usually it's quite a lot. Although I never had a project where we had a lot of knights, a lot of backstory, a lot of elements, and then we started like read it to like blank slate. And what we learned is that somebody who doesn't know this world will not understand anything. So we had to find like an entry point. And for us, I don't want to go deep into the story. Like I don't want to spoil anything, but our entry point was the original story, Seiya. We want to focus on him instead of a couple of iconic moments like the original manga and anime. And once we find a simplified starting point, we started to bring some elements back. Because we know, okay, this is the main story, this is our core, this is what we want to tell, and then how many characters we can introduce. How many things can we introduce in the background or with Seiya? And we ended up with, I think, a pretty good story and pretty good script. And I don't want to go too deep with the content. Of course, I kind of really like this idea of an origin movie, Seiya, so I was actually excited about that, and I was a bit worried that the live action would cut most of the beginning part. Excuse me. I really like the beginning of the story. I'm kinda excited for this. Yeah, I mean, there was some changes. There was like 40 years, or 30, I don't remember now. I think 40, which have since passed first edition, first story in the universe, so we had to kind of find a way to make some things work for today, but we are still quite close to the core of the tale, the original. So far, all good news. How involved with the movie is Masama Kuramada Sensei? Does the script, clothing, design, and so on get any approval from him? He was involved in several stages of the film, so when we were reaching certain moments, like the milestones, key elements, we were always asking him for his opinion, and we had some really good feedback from Mr. Kuramada about the armors and about the story and also about how to approach it. For me, I think the most important note we had, because first we started going very kind of superhero design, very super high tech stuff, and then he said, hey, it's like, first of all, the main inspiration was actual knights in armors. So we had to find, okay, can we use this inspiration lore and make the armors structurally based a little bit more on medieval armors, but at the same time make them look fantasy and make them closer to the Seiya universe with very uh, emphasis emphasized shoulders? It's a super important shape and sometimes very difficult to do because making this movement because I have up and down with hand, arms, and it's not animation when it's a living person. This is like a lot of ringing inside, a lot of things which have to work in the shoulder to make it work because this is the type of shoulder really limits the movement of the elbow. So there are some things we had to circle out. But yeah, we were having some consolutions with the also. I'm sorry, with the author. He'd seen the movie, he had some notes. We also know what to do in the future if the movie is successful, and we know where to go with the armor design. But one of the things I love about Saint Seiya and his armor design is that it's not locked in stone. Those armors evolve. They are evolved from the season to season. They evolve from how much more the characters can control the cosmos, and more evolved armors can become. and is very, very cool. Whew. Saint Seiya is loved in many parts of the world, but still not popular in others. How to manage both excesses and anticipation of some of the fan bases, and the need to introduce the series to others. I mean, it was the reason it took so much time to work on the story because every time we were happy with a script, we were kind of testing it with people who don't know it, say say at all, and very often they were coming out with like questions of confusing, oh, we need to explain this. We need to explain a little bit, scene which explain another element. And yeah, it's tough work. But at the same time, it's very, very cool and exciting that we kind of fell in love with this world, fell in love with those characters. There are so many great stories, and I just feel that I hope that this love will be visible, and I hope there's heart in this movie, and because of it. Please note that this is talking about fans. Are you checking the feedback about the trailers? There is this great quote. I don't remember who wrote it, but it's and I really want of the movie. People are different, and we are making this movie for like for a huge audience. So there will always be somebody who say, "Oh, I don't like this element. Oh, you should do this or the other way." And funny part is sometimes they will be even right, and I know it. But you know, it's a film and it's a movie.